say to that allegation that President Trump is going to meddle in the 2026 midterm elections, that that's what he's doing in Georgia?
I find it comical that one of the senators from Georgia is talking about schemes in elections. Remember, Georgia was example A of that in the 2020 election.
Well, there were two statewide recounts in Georgia, Mr. Speaker.
They sent mail-out ballots to everyone. Everyone knows all of the problems that occurred in Georgia. It was very controversial and remains so to this day because of all the things that happened there. Again, we're not going to relitigate that, but what we have to focus on is going forward to ensure that there are not questions about the elections.
So every bit of that is dishonest, but it's different flavors of dishonesty, all like mixed into a parfait. So first of all, no, there was no scheme. Not everybody knows that there were problems. Also, you don't think that there were problems, you spineless little weasel. You do not think that Georgia cheated on the election. You just know that you need to say that because daddy'll slap you down if you don't. So that was utterly dishonest. He says, we know there's all these problems with the mail-in ballots. Nope, you don't actually have a problem with mail-in ballots. Republicans didn't have a problem with mail-in ballots before Donald Trump. You're just lying there. And we need to make sure about the next one. Also, no, we're pretty sure about the election. 2020 was super robust and secure. You're only saying that again to justify the changes that are going to be made to the midterms and the 2020 election. So you're doing that. And the biggest lie, perhaps, we're not going to relitigate that. Would you like to check in with your papa? Because it feels like he's in the middle of relitigating it right now. But honestly, the raid that they did in the Georgia election office, the massive seizure of ballots, all of that, as grotesque as that is, as corrupt and likely illegal as all of that is, might soon be a sideshow to the main push that Donald Trump is making to rig this thing, which he announced on Dan Bongino's show.
These people were brought to our country to vote, and they vote illegally. And amazing that the Republicans aren't tougher on it. The Republicans should say, we want to take over. We should take over the voting in at least 15 places. The Republicans ought to nationalize the voting. And we have states that are so crooked, and they're counting votes. We have states that I won that show I didn't win.
No, you have some states that you won. You have some states that you didn't win. That's how it works. That's actually how it works in every election. There's states that you don't win. And the issue is that when you are so small, so broken, so fragile, with such a tiny little teeny weeny, that you can't acknowledge that. And you have to take the fact that you came up short in these states and say, therefore, they're not allowed to have their own elections. And honestly, I love the bumbling nature of all this. It's not, okay, we're gonna cross this line that should never be crossed, where the fact that the states administer their own elections, we're done with that. It's gonna be nationalized. He's not even doing that. He's just saying in like 15 places. I'm gonna guess like the 15 blackest cities in America would be my guess as to where he wants it. Like on a case-by-case basis, you're gonna go in there and take that. That's even more obviously nakedly partisan. And what I love is that on the other side of that screen, you have Dan Bongino, alpha male, rebel. He'll stand up against the elites when they are corrupt, when they're starting to break the law, except when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein. And he looked in the files and then he ran away home because he was terrified of what he saw there. And he's never gonna challenge the sex predators again. So now he has this wannabe tyrant saying that they're just gonna end basically free and fair elections. And he just does this the whole time. Nothing, he's got no reaction. He has been castrated, at the very least metaphorically. Potentially literally, we can't say for sure at this point, but my God, is he a diminished, pathetic, sad sack these days. So we'll have a lot more. We have some more messages from Trump about this, but Yaz, I want your thoughts about both what we've been seeing in Georgia, and we'll talk more about that, but in particular, him saying that they should seize control of the elections.
Yeah, well, first of all, I will say that it's nice to see that Trump and Bongino are still on good terms after their breakup. That's very big of Donald Trump and Bongino, I'll say. But yeah, Johnson said that the mail-in ballots were always controversial, but no, they were not always controversial. We've been doing them for a long time with a lot of success. And they only became controversial because Trump started lying about them whenever he was losing the election. He started lying about them before he was even losing the election because he was trying to tee it up so that when he lost the election, he could say, look, I was right all along. But Trump lying is not anything new, to the point that I wonder why people still put literally any value on anything he says anymore. And I know we're gonna talk about Tulsi Gabbard later on in this story, but even her, she came out with an excuse for whatever was going on down in Georgia and why she was there for it, even though it was really not the norm for her to be there in Georgia while the FBI was executing its raid. But she came out with a statement, and it's like, why would anybody listen to anything that these people have to say? Because we know that whatever they say is not necessarily the truth, because we've seen how easily it is to disprove the things that they've told to the public. We know that they've gone through all the PR works. We know that somebody wrote the statement for them. It's so pointless now that they say anything at all, it seems. So what we're seeing now is Trump is trying to take control. He wants to nationalize the voting coming for the midterms. The midterms are not looking good for the Republicans. Everyone knows it. Trump must know it because of all these actions that he's taking. And even other Republicans are telling Donald Trump that this is not good for the midterms. Everything this administration is doing or not doing for and to the American people, it's not going to reflect positively on Republicans in the midterms. Ted Cruz, I know I didn't want to talk about Ted Cruz today, but he actually told Donald Trump that things are not looking good for Republicans in the midterms. And allegedly Trump said, F you, Ted, which is fun, for everybody. But also, the federal and state governments taking control of local elections, at least here in Texas, that is nothing new. This has been going on for a long time. I live in Houston. It's the biggest county and the biggest city in the state of Texas. It votes blue reliably. And we have already seen a lot of unprecedented levels of state oversight in our local elections here. So this is something that they've kind of been already peddling out, seeing how it's gonna go. And unfortunately, the local level officials have very little power against the state when it comes to something like that. Our governor in particular is very sycophantic to Donald Trump. This is Trump country here because Greg Abbott has decided that it is Trump country, but Houston is not. So it is very concerning to see things like this happening in other states. I know Georgia politically is very similar to Texas, and Atlanta is politically very similar to Houston in a lot of ways. So I'm not surprised, unfortunately.
You know what TYT has always been about? Taking on the corrupt, greedy establishment. For us, it's the corporate media. We've been fighting that fight for over 20 years. For the cell phone industry, it's the same story. A handful of massive corporations ripping you off. That's why we're partnering with Noble Mobile. They're the only wireless company with the same mission as ours, to fight back. Their Noble plan offers unlimited data for just $50 a month. But here's the best part. For any data that you don't use, you get cash back. Real money you can spend however you want. Stop letting your unused data pad the pockets of billionaires. With Noble, you take control over your data. And by switching to Noble, you're directly supporting TYT in our mission of bringing you honest, independent news. So give Noble a try and make the switch today. Scan the QR code on the screen now or visit go.tyt.com/plan. That's go.tyt.com/plan.
Yeah, and so look, some of the senators, some of the Republican senators, John Thune, came out and said we're not going to do that or whatever. Although he does support things like the photo ID, and he spreads plenty of lies about election security and everything. They're saying they're not going to do it, but we need to be prepared for the maximal case of this. So when he's previously said that he's going to try to ban mail-in ballots, which he has no right to do, that does not mean that he's not going to do it. And I think he's definitely going to do it. He's going to do it before the midterms, hoping he's going to roll the dice on the Supreme Court, which has been incredibly deferential to him. They're definitely going to do that. They're probably going to seize control of the voter rolls of these states. They're definitely going to dispatch ICE and Border Patrol to many of these different districts, just enough to potentially keep control of the House. They're going to do literally all of that. So we all need to be prepared for it. And understand that while some are acknowledging the threat, even on Fox News, Jessica Tarlov said he's a madman and is just straight up telling us that they're gonna meddle with the election, which is what he's doing. If you're MAGA and you're watching this, what would you think if Harris had said we're gonna seize control of the elections in 15 places or whatever for election security, we gotta do it? Would you have accepted that from Harris or Obama, Biden, any of them in the future, AOC? Would you accept that? Obviously you would not. But also bear in mind that you are going to continually be told, as I'm sure you have for literally years, that you're just freaking out about nothing. And they have said that before. This is a fun reminder from Brendan Nyhan of two of the op-eds that ran before Trump was inaugurated. So there was this from Ross Duhat, I believe. There will be no Trump coup. Come on, if he loses in 2020, he's not gonna do a coup or anything. And then this from Mick Mulvaney. If he loses, Trump will concede gracefully. Which, look, in hindsight, that's comical. But it's also important to note that when he wrote it, it was comical. He's never, ever going to admit defeat. He is never gonna go gracefully. He is physically and emotionally, psychologically, testicularly incapable of grace. It's just not gonna happen.